Hi, I'm Eric Londo and let's talk together about responsibilities, thoughts, ethics that can be related to that new tool that is autonomous vehicles. A law firm has developed a series of videos on issues related to that topic, autonomous vehicles. The autonomous vehicles, that can be cars, buses, taxis, trucks and others, are making their place in our cities, in our lives and in our legislation. This raises hopes and fears. We made a video about it. Let's watch it. This creates a number of experimental problems as well. Let's see a video about it. This will require a lot of adjustments and adaptations for public authorities. We also made a video about it. But the topic about which we speak today is the most important one and the one everybody talks about. What are the consequences and parameters in terms of ethical choices and responsibility and torts? That's the subject of this video. As you know, if you've seen our videos, there are different kinds of autonomous vehicles, from 0, not autonomous, to 5, the most autonomous one. Most of the time we talk about levels 3 or 4. The car is pretty autonomous, but there's a driver that can take back the driving if needed. But the driver will therefore be somewhat in tandem with the machine, but he's got the last word, as long as we deal with autonomous vehicles of level 3 or 4. So there's a kind of shared responsibility between him and the car, and behind the car, the manufacturer of the car and the one who made the software. And you have a direct contract with the guy who made the software, the company who made the software, or do you have a direct contract only with the one who made the vehicle? And this vehicle, are you the owner of it or the renter of it through, for example, a free floating system, or is it given by the public transportations for small periods of rent? That will change a lot of things in terms of responsibilities or not, depending on the cases and depending on the countries. Today, when we all drive already our normal cars, we have ethical choices to make. I'm driving, okay. A child crosses the pedestrian crossing or walks outside of it. In front of me, I obviously slow down. But if there's a wall on the side, and if I have a choice between my life and the kid's life, what will I do? Of course, personally, I hope I will sacrifice my life and save the kid, but that's already a choice. It's already quite complicated to avoid humans to make a choice, but it's the human being who chooses today. If you do the same thing, but with an autonomous vehicle, with a robot, with a machine, it has to be programmed from the very beginning of the system set up. So what do? If I decide that in the configuration of the machine, the driver's life will give way to that of the pedestrian, it's not the same responsibility and not the same consequences if I don't. Will I, in such a case, adapt the driver's life to save other people's life, depending on the potential chances that victim can escape? Do I do that accounting to the numbers, the age, the ability to escape that I can guess or not, which we today do or not? Will I protect more the kids and the elderly or not? You might not have the same answers in the Western world or in Asia about that topic, according to some small experimental studies. Am I going to do what the general human being will do to put myself in danger if it's a question of protecting more people? If there's a group of persons? Do I set that in configuration of the machine? For example, can I parameter my car to be more or less selfish? Can I introduce a digital tool for that? Jean-François Bonnefond with the MIT developed online some experiments about it to see how people will react and choose the parameters of the car in this or this context. The results are fascinating. The University of Bologna did the same, imagining a physical button that would allow us to go for more or less selfish, more or less giving my life in exchange of the others. Imagine we do that for real in manufacturing the cars. Does it mean that if I choose the selfish button, I will be safe, but then there will be a big risk that I will be considered as responsible of the death of the other in a much more provable way than today in accidents. So that is extremely profound. We can end up with the responsibility of the driver, at least for his share of the choices he made at a time. On the other hand, if the configuration is not changeable, we forget all these buttons, software or hardware buttons. Everything is fixed at the factory. Then the dangerousness, either for the driver or for those who are on the road or the sidewalk, will be therefore attributable to the manufacturer and or the software vendor. That becomes complicated. In such circumstances, the French Council of State has reminded in 2014 that in such cases we should ensure that there is no discrimination that will ensure a possible human intervention in a likely decision-making process and all that. Okay, thank you very much. We kind of knew all that, but okay, but we have to go further, obviously further now. However, it is a decision-making process, either at the time of the accident or the initial configuration. That is something to be decided. The Council of State, Conseil d'État, French, wants us that one must set guarantees on procedures in transparency. Okay, that's a very common thing in procedures. What is important now is, will we have buttons? Will we have our choices to make in the settings of the car? If yes, of course, the settings of the car will have minimums and maximums that will be defined by the law. If not, there's a big risk of putting too much people in danger, although the autonomous vehicle globally should lead us to a less dangerous world in terms of accidents. The European Parliament was a little bit more specific and with a broader view than what the Conseil d'État in France said, and it recommended that we reflect about these questions in a more general way. Globally, he asks us, if it's not the way he wrote it, to reinvent Asimov's laws. Who was Asimov and what were his laws? This American, born Russian, was a thinker and a famous author of science fiction. He initiated 3 laws that are not legally laws, still considered as the basis of the configuration in robotics. 1. A robot may not injure a human being or, through inaction, allow a human being to come to harm. 2. A robot must obey the orders given by human beings, except if such orders could conflict with the first law. 3. A robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second laws. These are not laws, but it's still quite impressive to see that in very few words, Asimov has been able to summarize the basics of what we should have in mind when we program our future robots, or today's robots. Let's not forget that robots are also entering in the world of war. Today, driven like drones by human beings. But the tools to make it completely without human control are ready, and there are debates about it. So let's never forget that. But let's go back to the 3 Asimov's laws. People might say, oh, we got everything being said already. No, it's not true. It's not true. Why? Because think of an accident. The robot will have to choose between the lives of human beings, which is not possible in Asimov's laws, which is not possible in our today's rules of programming. Happily, yes, but we have to go to that path. Then we have to think about it. And the European Parliament was right to say we have to take a broader views of making parameters for all these robots, driving or not. Let's take another example about it. Today I'm driving my car. I got big walls on each side. To protect a group of children, I have to not only brake, but also go to the wall to stop my car instead of killing 5 or 7 kids in front of me. Do I go in the wall that is on the left and I kill myself, or maybe kill myself? Do I go on the right and maybe kill my wife? That's another decision, not only between the victim and the driver, but between the people who are in the car. Most people, me of course, would choose to sacrifice myself. Will it be what will be told to the car, to the robot, and how, and starting when? That's a very interesting topic, again, against Asimov's laws, because the robot will have to choose between human lives and even human lives on the owner's side. Let's add that the issues that we are dealing will become the more complicated in the risk of management, that the autonomous vehicles will share to learn and still do it badly to manage the situations of mist, frost and snow. They're not very good so far to know when and where is good to stop and no longer try to drive. Already humans are not so good at this, but robots are even worse. Another important factors concerning these autonomous vehicles which are in machine learning process, which are having an artificial intelligence, is to learn what is a bridge, a roadway. We will potentially have a problem for responsibility if those who teach the autonomous vehicles, these parameters are not completely up to date. There are a number of cities in France where we use the sidewalk at the same level as the pavement, but with a urban dressing and a selection of materials on the ground taking the limits. The experience proves that cars drive more slowly when they have this kind of urban patterns, and of course it's better for disabled people. But how do you teach that to an autonomous vehicle? In fact, most vehicles will learn by their cameras, by kind of sonars, but also by infos that will be sent from the public, local government, on the benches, lights or whatever, equipment of the city that will send these infos. Which means that we need, at least in Europe, probably a worldwide system, or something that is compatible. What if I drive with a current car in Latin America? Of course, I will need them to be able to discuss and talk with what will be sent from the equipment in Peru or Bolivia. So that needs very fast some homogeneous exchange of data on these kind of topics. And in terms of responsibility and torts, that means that the local governments who will implement it will be maybe partly responsible if there's a problem about it. Oh my God, changes a lot the results of car accidents. So who will think of teaching a robot that will be in China, in the US, these systems that exist in Vincennes or any other city in the world that tries new kind of pavements, for example? Finally, all these different actors will have to take into account that there are several ways to also to teach the AI, and thus the learning will be different. And this is going to be a problem between legislations but also car manufacturers. Then we'll face the difficulties if a human commits an error. As for now, the driver is responsible for the driving he makes. For example, if he doesn't follow the safety distances. Will we ask tomorrow to the car that will be autonomous but used to drive with humans to anticipate the most frequent mistakes made by humans or not? That's another element that will be, in terms of insurance, extremely important. Another element. Today, the police asks us to stop. We hear it, we see it, although the ways to stop a car are not the same in different countries. In the US and in Europe, it's not the same, for example. But if I'm in an autonomous vehicle, level 4, of course 5, do I give a kind of joystick to the police to stop the car? Am I ready to give that power to the police if I'm myself in the back seat? If there's no driver anymore, I'm level 5? Or if not, how do I stop the car when the police asks it? Probably with a possibility of the police to stop the car and the possibility of the driver to say no, but then that means to legalize rebellion? That's a problem too. And it's not sure that the answer to that question will be the same in France or the US, for example. So there are starting to be mock trials in most countries. It's been done in France, for example, in a very interesting way. In Lyon, the administrative judge tried it. The problem is that since a bill, une loi, of the 31st of December 1957, all the car accidents lead to the judicial judge, but that was done by the administrative judge. So they needed to find a way, a bias, to make them, to make that mock trial admissible to that justice, to that judge. And so what they did was the following. They guessed that the information kiosk was damaged and then didn't transmit the good information to the autonomous vehicle. So what happens? The first tribunal in Lyon said, okay, you know what, it's a risky thing to deal with this information kiosk and data exchanges. So let's consider that, like always in public law in France, when there's something risky by definition, then the victim can be paid back in terms of torts by the administration without having to prove a mistake, a fault. That was the position of the tribunal in that mock trial. It's been appealed, Another mock trial, of course, for not for real. And the administrative court of appeal of Lyon said, no. It's not a risky thing by definition. If not, you see the consequences. Administration would pay for a lot of things each time you got an accident. They came back to the normal administrative rules in such cases, which are the following. If I'm the victim of an accident and I'm not the user of the public service or the public domain that we're talking about, then I'm paid back without having to prove a fault, a mistake by the administration. If I'm the user of that public domain or of that street or that public service, then I am paid back if I prove a mistake, but a mistake can be a bad conception or a bad keeping in shape of that tool, or in that case, information kiosk. And it works. It works. They said, okay, the information kiosk was damaged. The administration has to check that very regularly, because if not, it's too dangerous. So the driver was the user of that kiosk, so he had to prove a fault, a mistake. But as soon as it's damaged, there's a presumption that the mistake is being done by administration, which is a very classical way to think in administrative French law. But, of course, we're talking about information kiosks that will be worldwide, and we might have very different attitudes legally in one country or another on that topic. But that is not such a problem. Might be shocking, but not such a problem. But most of the trials that will happen when we'll have autonomous cars in our cities will be taken care of by the judicial judge in France. We have a big difference between our administrative judge and judicial judge. With regard to it, the European Parliament realized swiftly that we had to have regulations and development at the European level, which we can all agree with, I think, on that topic. Thus, a resolution of February 2017, but made by the European Parliament, has announced that there shall be a compulsory insurance scheme, and that the European Commission shall make proposals on the subject, and we shall develop a system of graduated responsibilities. Meanwhile, most ethicists and analysts say, okay, today the French law is applicable and it works okay. What is the French law? Well, to summarize it in a few words, in civil law, in terms of torts, the French law is very socialized, which means that the driver is supposed to do something dangerous. Of course, you will take into account the mistakes of those who take care of the pavement or of the victim itself. But the general idea of the Adaptations Act of 1985 is that the driver takes first responsibility for the accident when the victim is a pedestrian. So it's not a question of being responsible for the mistakes or for the tool, the goods, but responsible because you do something dangerous. The driver carries out an activity supposed dangerous. That will be the same with an autonomous vehicle. But most ethicists and analysts say that we should make different rules depending of we are level 3 or 4, because still the driver is responsible, or level 5, because then the manufacturer is the responsible one, because we are not driving anymore, which is obvious, and which leads us, Iris Barson says things like that, for example, and which leads us then to the projects in Germany who are going to the same direction of making a huge difference between do we still have a driver or not. And that means also that then it's logical that the insurance companies want us to have a recorder in the cars, especially in vehicle level 5. It should be noted that we have several also adaptations to make to our criminal responsibility, to our criminal law. Today, you can be responsible if you have not been cautious enough, leading to someone being injured. Homicide ou blessure par imprudence. And then, when you have that, you will make a distinction, since Fauchon Act in year 2000, today it's the article 121.1 of the Penal Code, it's going to make a difference between am I the direct cause of harm or not. And if I'm not the direct cause of harm, which can happen sometimes in accidents, did I voluntarily neglected a rule of safety or not? You can see that this frame, the general frame, is still completely adaptable to autonomous vehicles, except that the intentionality of breaking a rule of safety, for example, won't happen much in level 5 or even in level 4 during the 1 or 2 seconds time for the human to take back in charge of the driving. Does the machine have to be designed, as it's the case to date, so as to revive the vigilance of the driver, for example? If not, is there a risk of responsibility of the manufacturer? That's another topic to be taken into account. An author, for example, Romain Gola in France, leads to the same thoughts about, like Iris Barson that we previously mentioned, saying that we should have different laws if we are level 5 or 3 or 4, and not the same responsible person. But you can realize that, in fact, we probably will have a lot of responsible people in the future, because the administration will be responsible, the manufacturer of the software will be responsible for some things. Shall we have responsibility that can be graduated depending on the kind of choice buttons that we mentioned previously that were studied by the MIT or University of Bologna? That becomes very tricky and might be even trickier in the future than it is today. Is it possible then to configure the vehicles beforehand, as we mentioned? It leads to the responsibility of the software vendor. Will it be going through the manufacturer or not? For that, we probably will have to also amend the Vienna Convention of 1968 again, which we mentioned in our video on experiments. Nevertheless, we have a large diversity on this point. Let's add these opportunities, and also, which are also considerable, the fact that the autonomous vehicle will become a way in the future to track us. That's another question of responsibility. What happens if there is a data accident or cyber terrorism? Who's going to be responsible then? So, all these issues raise a problem of relationship, as the European Parliament mentioned, between man and robot, for which Asimov's pretend laws are not sufficient anymore. Thus, the man faces today, on that topic, and a few others, the same kind of dizziness as in Metropolis of Fritz Lang. What did Fritz Lang tell us in this movie? That it's necessary to work on our social dimensions, or social breakings inside the society, and that can be related also between a problem of fracture and a problem of empowerment between man and robots. What about Asimov? Asimov said that the saddest tragedy of our current life is that science acquires knowledge faster than the society acquires wisdom. So, it's up to us to learn to acquire the wisdom and to transform into legislation quickly all these problems, because we won't slow down much technology and science, but we have to adapt our societies to protect the human in that world where we have to think of the relationship between the robot and the human being. That might look like a very obvious thing to say, but when you think of all the elements I pointed out in terms of torts responsibility in autonomous vehicles, it becomes extremely striking. One more reason to completely understand that what is happening to us with autonomous vehicles, and watch our new videos on that topic. So see you soon. Bye.